Hi everybody, welcome to Marvel Avengers Alliance here on G4G. I'm your host, Time Limited Napalm Dawn, because we only have until September 30th to continue logging into this amazing game. How many of you here among us would be okay if they shut down support and new stuff and just left the game the way that it is? I think that'd be okay because then it lets people go out on their own terms. When they're like, okay, I have Pokemon'd everything, I have everything, they're all 15, I have all the gear that I farmed, we get to go. It kind of lets you go out on your own terms, basically. You can exit the building when you want, rather than being forced to leave because there's a fire drill. Sad. But remember, guys, when it comes to Disney and Playdom and everything like that, at least let's not be maniacally angry about this. They obviously made a decision. We can hope that the petition does something, and that perhaps they will realize what kind of a community they have here and maybe rethink this a little bit. But there's been some press coming out that apparently it was how MA2 is not doing as well as they'd hoped that seemed to cast a bad shadow on their offerings. I mean, Disney is pulling out of their stuff. I've read more and more over the last few days of them like pulling out of Infinity and this, saying that they're just pulling out of the things they think smell a little rotten, but this game shouldn't have smelled rotten to them. And to have the younger brother of MAA2 do something bad at school and put this in detention also is kind of crap. But for the purposes of this video, I wanted to go through and share with you guys some of my all-time favorite gear throughout the history of the game. Basically, what I'm going to do is go all the way back to the beginning of my inventory and kind of work my way forward and discuss some of my favorites. Now, some things here may be expected and some things here might be a little bit more rare. And my intent is not to cause jealousy or brag about my inventory in any way, shape, or form. Just share the things that I've liked over the years. Lantern of Doom, obviously, it took the place of the Mystic and has been phenomenal. Very, very good usage for Null and Magic and Meteor stacks and everything, although I never really did it that way. I did take this out when I was running Tactical Suicide because the multifunction didn't work, so I put the Mystic in. But this is basically as good as what the Mystic does, but better. Golden Copus was one of my favorite items for attrition teams. It is an absolute stamina pig, but the good thing is it is up every round and causes just about everything that you could ever want for attrition, and then turns around and exploits it itself. The Golden Heavy Ion Beam was also kind of fun. It puts out some debuffs, and this is another thing that was up every round. This was kind of fun. We have the Golden Glove over here, which was similar to the T-Bolt Glove, in that it absorbs energy and has man-to-man, and it was a golden weapon, so for non-Spartans this would wind up being a little bit better. The Golden Glaze Ceramic Knife was part of the Smart set, the only set that you can technically farm for free. However, the biggest thing about the Smart set, the Revolt, kind of got nerfed, but you still, if you got the 750 watt power supply, were able to make good usage at it, as any of your smart weapons that were equipped had a chance to follow up on any of your other smart weapons. Little side note, Serpentine Staff, nobody really ever liked this as much as they had wanted to, just never really did the damage it was supposed to. Never got to use the Golden 49er much, but the Golden Fan I liked a lot anytime I ran a Protect Agent. Gilded Semi-Auto Gun was kind of nice for pinpoint for Hawkeye and Kate, but fell out of favor when Kate wasn't working for so long. The Bashenga's Blade, pretty cool. This had to get a nerf because it was overpowered for a little while. The xplay exploiter, this is one of the first things I ever got in the game. And this is one of the things that I am most proud of. This is kind of my... I was there before it was cool, but this is my hipster badge. Massive 4-round cooldown, but the history of this is that early on in the day of xplay, when it was on G4 TV before it disbanded and in my area became Esquire, something I was extremely pissed about when that happened. However, G4 kind of became known as the station that did Cops 22/7, basically. There was xplay and there was Attack of the Show, and then it was like Cops and American Ninja Warrior and the funny one, the Don't Get Eliminated show, whose name I forget right now, but it had the dubbing from Japanese into English and the stupid obstacle course and everybody like ran into walls and shit. I believe it was based on like Mr. Somebody's Castle was the Japanese name of it. But anyway, I believe it was Justin was being interviewed by Sessler on xplay at one point in time, and he was pitching the fact that this game was in beta and that you got some nice rewards if you went and tried out the beta, and that's how I got my xplay exploiter. Little side note, during that interview, he said he wanted to make a game as epic as Final Fantasy VII. And you can definitely see where Marvel takes its cues from some of the Final Fantasy games, as this game does have somewhat of a similarity to the older Final Fantasies. Marvel Avengers Alliance-A was closer to Final Fantasy X, and of course Tactics was a lot like Final Fantasy Tactics, minus the height differential. There were height differences in Tactics that you never really got into in MAT. For the record, I hated Tactics. Marvel Avengers Alliance Tactics. Final Fantasy Tactics is fine. Not too much on this page, although back in the day, I think when I first started PvP, I did use some of the Laufrey gear. I also used the Soul Drainer for a little while for the passive heal. Moving on over here, nothing in particular note. We do have the Monstrosity, which I did get early, and the Spirit Edge got a lowly Spirit Edge. You can see how old my Warbringer axe is. And the Flashing Eye, this was a big, big thing for me back in my early days of PvP. I generally had a Flashing Eye with me almost all the time. There's my Golden Screaming Eagle. Never really get to bring this thing out, although I think it could hit well. A interesting binding contract. Never really got to use this much, but perhaps with the new, if you're bleeding, you do increased damage ISO, this would have done well. There's my original Phoenix Pinion. I did use that in PvP for a while. Binding Contract does cause an immediate 3 bleeds, and it's magic. Probably could have been whipped out for some null related items, or maybe the magic equals heals ISO. There's my Golden Tonfa. Never really got to use that. Here's some of the Stark stuff from way back when. There's a Golden Katana. There is the Chalice of Souls. So this obviously was, and there's my Brute. Never really got to use my Brute a whole lot, but with the Spare and Buff Blocker, this was becoming considerably more important. There's my old ass Soldering Iron. There's my original Spark Plugger. The Chalice of Souls is, of course, this was a major thing in my tactical suicide time in PvP, because the Chalice can bring you back from just about anything, where Phoenix and Valkyrie would often fail to resurrect you. The Chalice always would, even if you self-banished yourself. So, and there's my Fist of the Colossus. More Flashing Eyes. Really did like the Chalice. It sat dormant in my inventory for so long and then became pretty good. Here we are starting to get into the Vindication set. I love the Stalker and my 3rd level Power Cell, and I used it in PvP for many seasons. Basically, I would hit somebody on the enemy team that had a chance of having more than one attack, and anytime that person attacked, my entire team would counter them. I used it very much for people like Magic and Sabretooth. Anybody who had something that stacked on their level 1, this was a free way of getting some level 1s out. Here is the Well-Rod Silence Pistol. I always bring this up when talking in my streams and some of my videos as one of the best ways to set up combo setup without actually having to use a non-stealthy attack. It is gun and it's melee, but it is stealthy, so this is good for setting up knockout punch people. Now we get into some of my Attilan set, and of course the biometric ID card. I remember when I was trying to save up to get this in the store, it actually never impressed me as much as it did. I really like the Horn of Wisdom. This was really cool for a long period of time because of its increase in stats and restoration of stamina. Sadly, you can never make it a quick action because of the fact that it's magic and not a buff. You would think this should have been tagged as a buff, and rightfully it should have, but its stamina restoration properties was always pretty good, and I have done some videos featuring the biometric ID card and how well that thing actually works. Even though it's been nerfed once, it seems to have occasionally come back out of its nerf status. The Stone Golem Club was very unique. Nobody ever talks about this. Nobody ever uses it. It has a long cooldown, and it has like some built-in splash to it. This may hit well if it was forged up to current standards. Here you can see some beginnings of my Vigilante toolkit. The Chaos Shot SMG. I really like this thing. Not only is it good for the smart weapon set, which means it could fire off with any other smart weapon item if you have the power supply, but it does attrition and then actually turns around and exploits it. And it's up every round. Always really enjoyed that gun. There's another binding contract. There's, of course, one of the shittiest things to have ever quested for in the game, the Rat Sniffer. There's my Screamer, which I have never used once. I've tried to make this happen with the gain extra additional follow-up attack as hit point is reduced. Never really effectively done it. Not on the Facebook version, but on the played-on version, I was actually using Loki's Scepter in PvP quite effectively in my newbier days. Here's Algrim's Rage, which has the chance to... this one was a little bit weird. It gains a follow-up whenever your stamina is nearly full. Impossible to use in today's standards, and I don't even know if this would have done good damage if it was forged up properly. There's my Marksman Spotter. Used that for a long time. Always really good to get targeted. And here's some of the, like, Dark Defiance era extra gear. There's an Eclipse. I think I have a... Yeah, there's my Shadow. There's some of the Loki items and Staff of Fire, Ice, blah, blah, blah. There is my custom magnetic field generator. Oh, did I farm for that. And also my custom only for killing. And my Shepherd Staff. Shepherd Staff, it's been fun to work this in. I've never really used it in PvP, but a lot of people tried to make like Molly teams work out with the Shepherd Staff and everything. This thing is, I really have to highlight this thing. Not that many people have ever gotten a Crooked Branch, and this is one of the things that I do get a little bit of jealousy for having this. This thing is great. Reverberation by this beats out the ISO because it means anything you do that's magic, be it a free action or a quick action, heals you. So with today's modern era of having the Mystic ISO and making everything you do magical, the Crooked Branch means anything and everything you do, including counters, would heal you. And it also pops enemies who try to use tech abilities. The Cube would be one of them. So up here is my original void generator. Use this a lot in PvP too. Even on defense until I ran into other agents using it, and the agent was always really stupid about this. One of the most interesting shield pieces in the game is that it puts a shield on your entire team if you have the high capacity charge, and it acts as a mystic shroud when it does it, and attackers hitting the shield actually have a buff removed. Could be quite powerful in the more modern PvP. It's one of the things that actually holds up. Never really used the cyclic hand mortar. But honestly, applying Ravage, Bleeding, and Shred, 50% chances might actually be really good. There's my first ever Shield Slugger. A lot of people have always tried to get one of those. Here we come into my sadness area. There's my Ensabunur's Liberator, which as we know is one of the early versions of the Hand of Apocalypse. There's my Hand of Catgut Sushi, as some people call it, or the Hand of Kagetsuchi. This was fun to use with the Firestarter gadget. There's my original reboot. Always liked the insert coin because it turns off infiltrators. And it even turns off scrappers. But I never did get a sugar beet to go along with it. There's my Army of One. Everybody spends a lot of time with Army of One at some point in their leveling history. And there's the Firestarter too. That goes well with the Hand of Kagetsuchi. Scroll of Angelobs litter the area. Now we start getting into the Horseman Spec Ops. Psychic Sacrificer Staff actually works out really well with the Psychic set. I've done some fun stuff with Gamma Radiation Emitter. There is my Pound of Cure. Much like the Crooked Branch, this is another thing that I constantly go back and reference. Genetically altered, much like Doomed and Purged and everything, is one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't debuffs. If you let it tick down on you, it's going to hurt, but if you remove it early, it's going to hurt even more. Really good setup for poison, really good setup for teams that you think will cleanse a lot. There's my Famine's Toll, there's my Apocalypse Subjugator, my original Voodoo Staff, Pink Bubblegum Launcher, Adhesive X. Really, really good when Melee and Quicksilver was popular. There's an early Chakra Strike and a Nin. There's the Revolt 5. It used to be able to fire all of its ammo and force you to recharge, kind of like Rocket. But then they nerfed this thing with the whole... It's a quick action, not a free action. Shame. Here is the X Oblivion, one of my favorite all-time things in the game, period. I used to call it the perfume sprayer, the cologne sprayer. Opportunist, by default, is okay, but once you get it up to the 2, 3, and 4, it's absolutely amazing. Ronin, I used to run this with Ronin in a lot of my tests by putting 2 pieces on here. The No Mercy and the X Obliv to get up to the pressure points, and then it sets up all the stuff that Ronin likes. Gauntlet Caress was trying to use this for a while with Null on my defense and Tag Team because it's melee, and if my agent got hit and countered with the Gaunt Caress, it procs Tag Team on Null. There's my Tankard. Everybody gets upset with the Tankard because every time it gets sold, you can't buy it unless you actually earn the ability to get it in the first place. Ridiculously stupid. There's my Scroll set. There's my Grim Mace. There's my Neurotrope, my Scroll of Aknazak. My Hexenjäger. Little known fact, this was bugged for a long time. If you killed somebody with the Skeptic buff goes away. The magic warding goes away. But if a enemy agent ran Pentecostal Oath and got magic warding this way and you killed the agent, magic warding stayed. Here is my Batstone Predator. Would be good for any bleed team because of Hunter senses, and it exploits bleeds itself. Some more Nans. There's my original Mahayuga. Now we start getting into the demon set over here. Here's my Hotshot, Signpost. Used a lot of the demon set for a while with Pesty and Captain Steve Rogers on offense. There's the Devourer. I call this the hardest working device in all of Marvel Avengers Alliance. If anybody's bleeding within a mile of the Devourer, it counters. There's my Dragon's Foot. My first Vibra Crescent. Love this thing a lot too. Use this quite often in PvE because of the fact that it has a chance to counter preemptively and set up flanked, which is nice. There's my Staff of Asclepios. There's my Chem Cannon. There's my Opportunist Exploiting Titanium RPG. Thorny! Oh man. When I used to run the Demon set on defense, I used to put Thorny in my agent's hand to hide exactly what I was running. And I did used to use this until the quick action nerfing a while ago. Back when you can stack quick actions, I had this. And I think the Signpost and the Hot Shot, and I forget what else on defense, but Thorny hides your setup because it applies all the debuffs, so you don't know what's coming. There's my Hard Knocks, kind of an unofficial part of the Demon set. There is my Combat Serum, the Mimic, which is good if you're running a tank agent. Chitter Chatterbox, oh boy did I use this a lot in PvE. I love the flanked on this. There's my Neuro Purge, which I loved. This was my giant counter when Hafe was very popular. When the Hugin's Eye started coming around, I ran the Wakandan Rungu to cause Staggered before the Scroll of Rudamaroth. Never did get the full version of the Psychic Amplifier. There is my DFR, another honorary part of the Demon set. The shitty Overloader. There is my Coulson's Revenge, when I finally was able to buy it. Here is other parts of my Vindication set. Always did like the Vindication set. Another Warbringer Axe. The Raft Shank. There's my Cube at 244. Solar Storm. Always, I love the animation for Bone Chiller. I love it when there are the Jotun that actually use the Bone Chiller. It's just such a one-handed batter up. Flaming Post. The ability to put out Pyrophoric and flanked, but only when it countered. People didn't really like this one because of that. I kind of enjoyed it if I was running a tank agent. There is my Mystic. Here we're starting to see some of the integrated intelligence set. There's the E-Regulator Shield, which I've heard works out really well with the suits. Still haven't tried that out yet. There's my TOE. Here is my Savage Spear. Mark of the Brotherhood. Another one like Crooked Branch that I have that a lot of people like, ooh, fuck you, over. Loved Mark of the Brotherhood only with mutants. When I was running X-Force Archangel and X-Force Psylocke the first time, this was definitely part of my kit on offense. Not just for the morale boost, but that rally back before Psylocke started getting some really good ISOs and everything. This was good. I did not use this the second time around because it wasn't needed. Psylocke got too many good ISOs, so I didn't need to provide them with rally. But, you know what? On any mutant days of, you know, the dailies and everything, whip out your Mark of the Brotherhood if you have it. The Dense Electrotech Hammer. Nasty 2-round cooldown for this thing, but worked out very, very well in the electric meta. I would often run this with the Thunderstrike Hammer if I was doing like Thor and Beta Ray Bill, etc., etc. By the way, Cosmic Energy on the Kinetic Energy Blade. Integrated Intelligence Set items, the Guardian Insignia. Really good for giving yourself Rising Up, but makes you an honorary member of the Guardians, so good for things like Drax, where everything you do causes bleeds. There's my Ablative Helmet, or Ablative Helmet, Old Ebony. The really cool Beyond Corp Driver. This thing counters very, very well. There's my Blade of the Guardian. Haven't ever really used that in PvP, but I do use that in PvE quite a bit, especially if I want to be protecting. There is my Emerald Prism. Boy, was I so happy when I got the Emerald Prism, because I finally was able to make my dreams come true from the Thing is Invincible video. that Kingfisher did with Black Bolt and Thing. However, my most amount of usage for this was Molly before going into a tantrum. I ran this for several seasons with Hafe and Molly, and would dump this on Molly for her tantrums, and she just became a beast. The rocket pistol, I hope everybody who watches this video owns one of those. The rectifier, again like Mark of the Brotherhood and the crooked branch, I always find a way to work the rectifier into energy-related team-ups and everything. I love this. I constantly come back to this. Never used it in PvP, but there are plenty of times when I run into energy people in PvE, and I make teams around the rectifier. Including Kid Nova. The cybernetic lave thing hits pretty hard. By the way, with another piece, this thing actually becomes psychic, which would have been so good in the current meta of walking around like protectors and drains and everything like that. There's my early Manvatara. There is my Vigilante toolkit. My white light ring that unfortunately I never really got to use that much of, but did win somewhat recently. My handheld fan. Ultron cannon. Nornstone, have one of these, never used it. Haven't equipped this yet, which kind of makes me sad. Alright, moving on for more interesting gear. Tons of Ring of the Faltines. Did finally get a Valtor. Quick Kazari Spear. Have never equipped that one, sadly. Stun Baton, part of the Smart Set. I have done that sometimes when I run full Smart Set. Because a chance to get a free attack from this and cause stun. Really, really awesome. Tons of Psychic Bands. The Menacing Pulse, known as the free action from way back when with the other Destroyer Head one. This was becoming very, very popular in the Drain meta because this was up every round. It was a free action. I think I did try to cheese that out on a tactical Drain agent on defense. There is the Psionic Disintegration Rifle, often called the Custom Only for Killings upgrade, except it has a big 3-round cooldown, but it does hit everybody. The Overwatch Protocol, not to be confused with the Chitter Chatterbox, an Obsidian Cane, a Momentum Engine, the quick action version of the Momentum Generator, the Famine's Post, kind of like the Famine's Toll. Finally got a Holdren's Call after I had been farming that mission for a long time. Free action version of the Emerald Prism. There's the Lightning Strike. I've used this a lot for energy-related teams, plus works out really well with the GFF and the BFF because of the strengthened. Key of the Nile, never really used it. Free action version of the CMFG, did use that in PvP defense. There's my Ionic Devourer, which became, of course, very popular when everybody was healing. There's the Doom Cup. There's 3 Sparta Boots. Might have equipped that in some PvP defenses. Can't really recall. Cosmic Shielding, which caused a stir in PvP when this first dropped, because it was a free action with no cooldown. So people were putting it on their defensive teams, and it was just getting used eternally. Wakandan Mace. This is a fairly recent addition. Loved using this anytime I had to generalize somebody, especially people like Mandarin, or High Evolutionary, or Bastion. There's my 750 watt power supply, which is really a good part of the Smart Set. Blind Justice. Oh man, I enjoyed doing some PvE with this thing, especially if I want to get people's level 1s getting going. Freezer. I've used this for occasional defensive agents and everything because of the icing up, increasing defense. Here are the Thunderstrike, otherwise known as the Beta Ray Bill and Electro Bug or Exploit. I've used this in PvE a lot, especially with static teams or electrical teams. Vampire Sword, part of my tactical suicide team up. I ran this with the corned beef. And yes, the Vampire Sword was giving you a ton of extra turns, and you could even turn jump people like Quicksilver and Spitfire. Vajra. I only got one of these somewhat recently, but this was very, very popular in my early days of PvP. Mostly because of splash damage. It's based off Omega Sentinel. Spider set stuff, never really ran one of those teams, offense or defense. T-Boat Glove, I've definitely set up some defenses around that. Bishop. I like the Bishop with the Rectifier because when the Bishop counters, much like the way the Cosmic Cardinal does, every time this counters, I would heal. I have teamed this up with the Rectifier a lot. There's my experiment. I was the one extolling the virtues of this a few seasons ago when Emma was very, very popular. Tactical Launcher. This is from the current Spec Ops, and it is available if you equip this in the 5th slot and get into a suit. So we have found something, thanks to one of my YouTube viewers, something other than the Scroll of Aknazak that is usable when you are in the suit. Staff of Agony, fucking psychic set stuff. God, I'm going to be so happy not to be dealing with that. Lots of soldering irons and everything over here. There's another skeletal cup. Sinister Scepter. Man, I was so happy when I finally won one of these because it was one of the only ways to make the agent intangible. There's the Spear Blade. I used the shit out of Ruby Quartz Rifle for a long time on PvE because of the combat expertise on it. Never really ever slotted a Rune of Resolve. The Savage Axe is part of my one-shot Raffle Stomp agent. I like having this thing because this does stack with the Spear and the Hallowed Flamethrower to really juice up the agent's attack if you want to. Psych Operator over here, another reboot. Bunch of the Rough Riding Rifles, which I think was a Christmas item. Roar of the North, part of Agent Raffle Stomp. Here we see some of the foreboding devices start to appear. Another monstrosity. Moonan's Eye. I've tried to occasionally make some defensive teams in PvP around this Moonan's Eye, but unlike the Hugins Eye, this one's just awkward. Panther Blade. Kind of like that other one back over there that we dealt with. I've equipped this more than the original. Phoenix Flare. Definitely could become part of Agent Raffle Stomp instead of Roar of the North, as this does hit everybody. Pneumatic Sledge. Really heavy hitting item, and one of the few items the agent can use that is Sonic. He's got a few, but honestly ground is one of the things that the agent lacks the most. He doesn't have a lot of ground attacks. Mine Launcher, Worthy Gear, tons of Manvataras, Metaphysical Rifle. Lightning Needle was pretty good with electric meta stuff. Not too many ways for the agent to cause shred, which is like bleeding for the unbleedables. Because this is electric, this one works out pretty well if you're doing electric meta stuff. Of course, the Lunacy, definitely use that in PvE, PvP, both defense and offense. There's my magic incantation ring, which unfortunately never really got to use. Particle Accelerator, which makes you a Age of Ultron dude. 2 Hugins Eyes, 1 from an incursion. I've definitely equipped this in PvP defense. The Grimoire of the Legion. Much like my Rectifier and Mark of the Brotherhood and Cursed, the Crooked Branch, this is one of the things that I absolutely love that I have. Yes, it does can cause bleeding on all of your people, but if you do this when you have immunities like first round thanks to the Mystic, AoE flanked up every single turn. Really like this game, this item, and have done a lot of PvE teams around this. There's the Golden Sextant, like that thing a lot. This was part of my PvP team at the end. Last season, Howl Flamethrower gives you might, stacks with the Savage items. Goreblade, the new Glimmering Staff, which I haven't equipped yet, but I have other ways that are doing Cosmic Glow. Foreboding Devices, Femme Fatales, which I haven't really used a whole lot of. Here's the Corned Beef at the Feed Denrock. This is what enabled my Tactical Suicide team. There's a Girl's Best Friend. There's a new edition of the Frozen Hell. I don't think I've ever equipped it, unfortunately. Oh, this custom possessed pistol. Man, does that thing hurt like a beast. The new item, I was using it, I forget, it's that Dark Edge. It's the last weapon that we got. Really, really good with bleeders. I like using the Devourer with this. And I had some hopes for using this in a couple people. Custom Sword of the Barony. Unfortunately, we won't really ever get to realize the fun of this thing, and that one makes me sad. Cosmic Flame. I absolutely love this item. I used to like to drop it on Fandral before he did his Fling Circus, so not only would everybody get 3 stacks of bleeds, they would get hit with Soulfire. It says it applies Soulfire on your next attack to one ally. I liked pairing it up with AoE. Another Nornstone. I'm using the upgraded version of the Stifler's Mom over here. Here's my custom Goblin Glider. Sadly, I lack that AoE poisony glider that was so popular for pesty teams. Channeling Glove. Really like this one with Bane. There's another Chalice of Souls. There's my Brawn Mace. I like burying Lead the Charge on the agent behind that. There's my Mercurial. My Witch Hammer. Wave Nullifier. I've run this in PvE a lot, especially with the Rectifier. I like the counterattack and that residual charge. Arc Reactor, Annulling Spear. Barrow Guard. Two rapiers? Not even too sure why I have 2 rapiers, to be honest. The Quit. Man, I used the Quit for a season or 2 on PvP offense. Really like this. Scroll of Runemeroth. Love this thing enough, and it was part of so many PvP teams for me, that often people on my stream called it a crutch. A second Techno-Organic Endoskeleton? Huh. Not even too sure why I have to. Splinter Knight can hit anybody on the field that has Dark Void. So, I actually have gotten into a few discussions with this over people. I was trying to convince JW that I hit somebody by using the weather control device. And this followed up on it. And he was like, no, it doesn't work that way. And I finally got proof. He was like, okay, wow, yep, you're right. Guess the game's retarded. But yeah, Scroll of Runemeroth, pesty without the negative. I got this the first time it came around, and I couldn't tell you people enough to get it anytime it comes around. And some people listened, and they got it, and it just eliminates the need for accuracy. The Falb, really like this thing. It was in for offense for me for a few seasons. The Isosaur Whisperer. Everybody hates this thing. I like it, especially when I run a Protect Agent, because it's an AoE flanked. Psychic Fist, Pneumatic Nailer, Master Sword. Boy, I like this thing. Anytime you're running Opportunist debuffs, the Master Sword is great. My Iron Star, it actually hits very hard. My Infernal Blazer. Is that my Oni Breaker? There's my Oni Breaker, Peace Pulsar. The Betazer. The Deb. A new Devour. Don't underestimate the Ecotech Blaster. That thing was really good. My Bow of Binding, the Attilan's Call, and the other shit free action ones there somewhere. And the Deathlock Fist, which also hits really hard. So, there is some of my favorite gear throughout the history of the game over here. My hidden little gems that I have that it seemed like not a lot of people ever really got and didn't talk about that much. The Quit, the Rectifier, the Mark of the Brotherhood, the Crooked Branch, Thorny, and... God, what's the other thing that I'm thinking of? The Rectifier. Those are all some of the items that I've come back and routinely worked into teams when I've done them for videos and everything. There's my Black Roscoe. There's a couple Carafists. Carafists is always one of the ones that I kind of forgave people for slotting. But now, I mean, Ethereal Strike. I think we've kind of overlooked the power that the Carafist could have... I mean, I just realized Ethereal Strike. That would hit all those phase people, and if they had combos set up, plus the breakthrough and the wind-up, I think the Carafist was a little underrated. This is not the free action version. This is the Caltrop launcher. I use this for a little while in PvP too because of the bleeding and the unable to use ranged abilities. There's a Chem Cannon. Charge of Witches. I do have that item somewhere around here that says the next thing you do causes breakdown. I have some Doombringers in here for the Doombringer strategy on group bosses, but I was very, very late to that party. Took me a long time to get one of those. But, that is pretty much about it for some of my favorite gear of all time. Hobnail, by the way, or not the Hobnail. The other one that looks like this is considered a debuff, so if you ran it with that one tactician suit where debuffs become a quick action, you can turn that little debuff remover one into a quick action. It's the one that's for sale in the store. I forget the name of it. Grimoire of the Legion. Really, really like that thing. I actually used to use it in PvP by only using it when I had protection up. So I would use it in round 1 when I was protected by the Mystic, and then use it anytime I could clean it off by the cube or something like that. Grace Note. Iso-infused Mighty Mace. That's about it, guys. If there's any favorites you have in the game, feel free to comment on it below. If you've got any gear that you really love that you haven't seen in my inventory or I didn't talk about, or things that I may have skipped that you thought was really good and you're like, oh, you scroll right past it, you didn't talk about it, let me know. I'm definitely curious as to what you guys have as favorite gear, especially your hidden gems. That's the ones that I want to know about. The things that you constantly try to work into your team no matter what. And, you know, a piece of gear that you just keep coming back to and find good ways of using. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care, everybody.